German, German, German. We always hear that German is one of those hard languages to learn. It has that reputation. Aggressive, harsh, impossible to pronounce. And yeah, it does have some tricky sounds like especially for English speakers. Because of that, a lot of people don't even consider learning German. And many who do actually start learning German, they end up quitting early, usually because of the overwhelming language system of the German language. But before we even talk about German specifically, there is something important to say. When you use the right learning strategy, most languages end up being equally difficult. Through immersion, you don't sit there and memorize rules, you actually just pick them up automatically, often without even realizing how complex the grammar is. Chinese babies, for example, don't find Chinese harder than English babies find English. When you consider like immersion, then all languages are just like languages, that you can just learn and pick up. So the question isn't really why is German hard? The question is why does German feel hard? But before we talk about the hard stuff, I want to tell you why German is actually easier than its reputation. First of all, German is very close to English. They come from the same language family, and you actually notice it immediately. Taken, for example, Haus, Wasser, Name, Freund. If you don't know German, you probably guessed what those words mean. Even those famous long German words, they're often the easiest part because they're actually just smaller words combined together, like glued together with no space in between. Once you stop seeing them as those long German words and start actually breaking them down, they become very easy to understand and recognize and learn. And that brings us to the second point, which is German is very logical. Things don't usually change randomly. If something changes, there's a reason for it. That's frustrating at first, but it also makes the language predictable over time. So if German is logical and familiar, why is it hard? Or why does it feel hard? One reason is that German gives you a lot of ways to be slightly wrong. You can be advanced, communicate very well, and still make basic mistakes. Wrong article, wrong case, slightly off word order. You're understood, but it's not quite right. Then there are noun, genders, and cases. You have 3 genders with 3 articles, der, die, das. Then you have 4 cases, nominativ, accusativ, dativ, and genitiv. And everything changes depending on that article, that adjective, sometimes even the sentence structure. That's a lot to hold in your head, especially when speaking. Another challenge is prefixes. You learn one verb, you add a prefix, you get a new word that has another meaning. I understand this exists in many other languages. In German, it's just in another level. For example, taking the word warten, which means to wait. If you add up to it, abwarten means to wait and see. It's used in specific situations, right? And then if you actually use one of these words in the wrong context, you're still understood, but it doesn't sound natural, which is frustrating, especially if you're already at an advanced level and you just want to sound natural. And sounding natural is one of the hardest part of German. And finally, verb position. In German, you often have to wait until the end of the sentence to place the verb. So you start talking, add details, build the whole sentence, then you add the verb. If you forget the verb, the whole sentence just falls apart. This makes fluent speaking harder because you're constantly planning instead of speaking. So to end this, German isn't hard because of its aggressiveness. It's not hard because you suck at learning languages. It just feels hard because of how precise it is. And because most people try to learn it in an unnatural way. With enough input and immersion, the difficulty evens out. German becomes just another language with its hard parts and easy parts. It doesn't require talent, it requires time, patience, and exposure. And once it clicks, it actually clicks. If you got to this point, I really appreciate your time. Don't forget to leave a comment, please, and subscribe if you're interested in the content, and don't forget the like. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.